building their personal brand because they realize that the reason why their patients sometimes come to the practice is because of them, the way they see the world, their thoughts. So I definitely feel dentists should be having their own brand, whether they've got a practice or not.
Hey guys, it's Shaz here and welcome to episode 37 of the Protrusive Dental Podcast. This one has been really sought after. Now and again, before I record an episode or just after, I put it on my Instagram story and I share with you guys what I'm up to, what I'm recording, and this one had so much love. It's all about personal branding for you as a dentist, as an associate, as a principal, not for the clinic, but for you. Is this important? Should you have a logo? Should you have your own clinician website? So this is exactly the type of things that we'll be talking about today. I've got on the show today Dr. Shaz Memon, who is so well known. I mean, he wrote the book on Instagram for dentists, right? So what he doesn't know about marketing yourself as a clinician is not worth knowing. My own experience with branding yourself as a dentist goes as far back as my first ever year out of dental school. I remember I had a logo. It was a rubbish logo, and I'll tell you what it was when I speak to Shaz. You'll get to hear about my ridiculous logo. Anyway, I had it, and then I used to watermark my photos with it, and I used to be very proactive. I used to post photos even less than 12 months qualified because I was trying to build a portfolio. I was trying to reflect on my work. Anyway, I then started to read on some Facebook dental forums, whatnot, that a lot of dentists, a lot of experienced dentists were bashing young dentists, saying, who the hell are these guys to have a logo? And that really sort of affected me. I thought, okay, maybe they're right. Who the hell am I to have a logo? But I think now, 2020, your brand is everything, right? So I think maybe everything's turned. Maybe it's acceptable, a bit more acceptable to have your own logo. I don't know. Let's find out. Let's speak to Shaz and see what he thinks about this. In terms of having a website, I have my own clinician website, and I think it's so important to be Googleable. Can someone Google you? If your name is John Smith and someone types in John Smith dentist or Dr. John Smith, are you number one? Are you on even page number one of Google? Because I think that is so important. I know for a fact my patients Google me, and I know this because they've told me at their first consultation, oh, I Googled you. And then they might say that, oh, your son is really cute, or, oh, Dr. Julian Weber because you won his endodontic prize, or whatever, They pick up this stuff about you. So if you don't have a Google profile, if you don't have an existence on Google, then these people can't find you. And when people find you through Google, or people read about you through Google, even if they're brand new patients, if they're cold patients, then they actually warm to you. It's a bit like when you get a referral from a patient of yours that's happy. So when they refer someone over to you, that patient that they referred, they're almost I think are far more likely to trust you and accept any treatment plan you give them compared to a cold patient off the street who has no prior relationship or hasn't had any sort of referral from anyone else. So I think the website or a Google search results or whatever your image is on Google is a bridge between you and having a recommendation from someone, which people value very highly. Not too long ago, I was referred to an ENT doctor because I had a lump at the back of my throat. And you get this text message saying that you will see Dr. Elias, I think his name was, at this hospital at this time. And the first thing I did was I Googled Dr. Elias and I read about him, and I felt like I already had some information about him, and I had something called social proof. So all these other people that he'd seen as an ENT doctor and all these positive reviews I read, and that was really important for me. And I started to think, hang on a minute, people are Googling me as well. And for sure, they definitely are Googling you. So the protrusive dental pearl I have for you, very relevant and very pertinent for this episode, is about how to make yourself more Googleable, how to make yourself appear on page one on Google when someone types in your name. Now, you don't necessarily have to have your own website, although, you can listen to the episode and see what you think about our discussion with me and Shaz. Now, Doctify is like Google reviews, but it's for you as a dentist or a doctor or a specialist. So it's Google reviews, but for you, not your clinic. And I have this on my own website. And when you type in my name, I'm very Googleable, if I may say so myself. We type in Dr. Jaz Gulati or Jaz Gulati Dentist. My own website will come up as number 2 or number 3, but my number 1 page is my Doctify profile. And it's basically how genuine patients have been able to leave reviews for me. Now, the benefit of Doctify for you as an associate, or you even as a practice, because you can have like a practice account, is that we've all seen it, or maybe even experienced it, that fake review. Okay, so it's a fake review, maybe from a competitor down the road, or maybe from a confused person or from a troll who gives you a 1-star review, and you look at the name of the patient and you think, wait, that name isn't on our registers. We've never seen this patient before. Why have you never said anything to us? Why are you going straight to Google? So these fake reviews, which are becoming more and more common, and it's so annoying and hurtful to have these fake reviews, because you build and you work so hard to create your online presence, and you work so hard to get genuine positive reviews. And if you have a 1-star negative review, especially if it's a fake one, that is really, really frustrating. It's a real big problem for us in dentistry. So the way Doctify works is that only verified patients can leave a review, and I think it's just amazing how the algorithms of Doctify are so intertwined with Google that you actually find that your Doctify, all these dentists who have Doctify at the moment, their Doctify profile is ranking on page 1 and often number 1 of Google, which is amazing. So if you don't want your own website, or if you want to supplement your website, so for example, on my website, jazz.dental, which used to be the podcast website, but now is my own website for patients to find me on, you'll find this really cool widget, and I'll show you here in the background here as well, is the really cool widget which shows the reviews, and I think it looks really cool, and I think it looks very professional. So I really like Doctify for that, and I've been using it since November last year. Alex Thomas, who sort of runs or looks after the dentists on Doctify, he actually called me personally and said, Jazz, I love your reviews. Your reviews, yes, they're about 30 odd. It's not about the quantity, but the quality of each review is fantastic. So it's a great way of collecting reviews and getting yourself Googleable and building social proof. And if you like the idea of Doctify, I think is definitely brought patients in for me. And I think just to have that Google profile, that Googleability with Doctify is worth every penny. You can get 10% off if you just tell them that you listen to the Protrusive Dental podcast. So thank you so much at Team Doctify for allowing the listeners to have this benefit. So you can get 10% off if when you join Doctify, either as an associate or a practice, and you quote Protrusive Dental podcast or just Protrusive, you'll get 10% off their entire fees, which is amazing. So that's the Protrusive Dental Pearl. Check out Doctify. So let's join Dr. Shaz Memon talking all about websites and personal branding and logos and how to market yourself as a dentist. And before you all message me and laugh at me about this, one of the surprise things we did in this podcast is, we didn't plan this at all, is I made Shaz critique my own website, because I'm kind of proud that I made my own website, and I made him critique it live as we were talking basically, and all the changes that he recommended, which I completely agreed with, I still haven't implemented them. Just I'm so short of time, I guess. So maybe if you're thinking about finding someone to make your own website, then maybe that's one good reason to have someone else do it rather than doing it yourself, because you can just tell someone else to maintain your website for you rather than doing it yourself. But I hope you find this episode really useful, and I'll join you in the outro. Shaz Memon, welcome to Protrusive Dental Podcast. I'm really, really happy that you accepted my invitation to come on. Thank you.
Pleasure is all mine. Thanks, Jazz. I'm really interested in today's topic. It's going to help, hopefully, lots of people.
That's exactly what it's about. And the reason why I brought you along into this episode is I was going to, do it solo. And some episodes I do solo, like I did one about CVs and portfolio. I did one about finding an associate position, stuff I'm happy to talk about and I can talk about day and night. But when it came to this topic of personal branding for dentists, yes, I have my own experiences. Yes, I have my own opinions, but I think it would be doing an injustice to the people who tune into the podcast if I didn't bring an expert in like yourself. So that's the role you're going to play today, Shaz, an expert. So very few people out there, you wrote the book on Instagram, for Christ's sake. For those who don't know who you are, can you please tell them who you are and why you are a good person to talk to about personal branding?
Sure. Thank you, Jazz. So my name is Shaz Memon. I'm the founder of Digimax Dental. We're filming today in our studios in Marylebone. I founded Digimax almost 20 years ago, believe it or not, right? And in my early days, when I was first starting up, not many people actually know this, I used to design, when I was at university, a lot of flyers for the gigs that you'd see around, right? That would be plastered around. So in that era where there's no Instagram, and slowly I worked my way up and I started entering the corporate world. I always had Digimax. So Digimax, I started then, and I started doing work on a freelance basis, worked in the back of my garage. And during my journey, I got the opportunity to work with lots of amazing brands. And just to give you a little bit more of a rewind, so I've got two older brothers who are designers as well. So when I was growing up, they're 10 years older than me. I was immersed in a design household. So by the time I was 10 years old, I could kind of do some of the things they could do. So by the time I reached 15, 16, I had skills of someone who may have been in industry for 8, 9 years. So I was always in a creative environment. And during my career, branding has been a big part of the work that I do. Studied branding. I've worked on hundreds of brands. Many of the brands are in your fridge, your larder, your utility room right now that I've worked with. So I've just had a lot of experience with it. And Digimax as a company has done a lot of work for some of the brands that we see out there today.
I really like your story. I think I love the story of, people's backgrounds and how they end up where they are. Have you read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell?
I haven't. I heard it's very good.
Okay, so one thing that you immediately reminded me of some of the things that we learned from Outliers is your background experience and how, you had those two older brothers in design, and how at an early age you had that exposure which changed the trajectory of your career and your life. So it's often to do with the background, the nurturing that you get in, as you're growing up. So that's why I really like your story. And the other reason why I had you on, Shaz, is I'm just seeing the stuff that you're putting out there for dentists. And I really respect it. I think you're giving a lot of dentists a lot of value, and a lot of it is free. So I realize that one thing I want the listeners and people watching to take away from today is, a lot of these are young dentists, and we're in 2020, we're in coronavirus land. Economy is not going to be doing well, we think, for a while with dentists. So I've seen a lot of new dentists join Instagram recently, a lot of new Facebook pages that I've been invited to that represent like dentists and the practice. So people had more time to do that. And one of the questions I had from a friend of mine was, Jazz, I see you've got a website. I see you've got one for the podcast, for your personal website, and I see you doing this stuff on Instagram. And she says, how can I do all this? I don't even know where to begin. And that's what gave me the idea. And I thought, okay, who can I get on that will hopefully be selfless? Now you have, let's be honest here. Let's be brutally honest. You have a financial interest, right? You have Digimax. You're a person. You do personal branding for dentists. But I just somehow knew, and when I had that phone chat with you, it was so reassuring that we're going to make an episode to give as much value as possible to help young dentists do it on a budget if they can, and just stay clear of some mistakes maybe.
Absolutely. So, Jazz, I think I'm glad that you brought this up. And usually the way things go is you invite a guest, they've got a company, they're subliminally selling or directly selling. That's not what I'm about or Digimax is about. And you quite right to identify that. Of course, we offer this service, but today is not about saying how great we are, or I want to give you skills to take away. If you're watching this, if you're a young dentist, or even not a young dentist, but you've been thinking about personal branding, I can give you things that you need to think about, whoever you use. It doesn't have to be us. We're happy if you launch this successfully. And just to give you some information, right? I wrote this book. This book, we don't even offer Instagram services, okay? I wrote this book because I kept getting asked, what should I be doing with Instagram? And I don't know, when it comes to ethics and things like that, we're quite high on that scale. And it upset me that so many agencies out there offer Instagram marketing because they know people want it. But what they're not being honest about sometimes is that a lot of the time it's not going to work because engagement's going to be low. So it's like frustrating me that people I care about were losing money. So just to back up what we're talking about here, I wrote a book where there's no real financial interest. All the money goes to charity just to help people. So today's no different. We're going to help people today.
I love it, and let's continue on that vein. I'm actually deviating away from the script because I'm really enjoying where our conversation's heading. So the first thing I'll say is, because you mentioned, okay, not just young dentists, some established dentists who are out there who can gain a lot from this episode. So the first thing I'll think of is some dental practices, right, are guilty of the following, and some businesses, some industries, okay, and I'm hoping this will be a topic close to your heart. I may be wrong, tell me. When you go to a dental practice and their email address is, I don't know, this town dental practice at gmail.com or at btwell.com. That it can be, I don't need to explain, but can you explain to everyone why that is such a bad idea?
Yeah, surely. It's just not professional, is it? Using NTL World or BT Internet. it just does not feel like an organization that you're transacting with. So a long time ago, we used to see email addresses like that. Even we'd print something at hotmail.com on business cards, and we'd be like, come on, that's not right. But these guys need their card. Let's get it out. So yeah, it just doesn't look professional, is it? Quoting someone else's domain name in your own marketing material. That's a big no-no.
That's lesson number one. Think about getting your own domain and your own brand to your email. Email is so important nowadays. It always has been. It's interesting, actually. I was reading up about how email is almost being rediscovered. You know how you can have like Instagram followers, Facebook page likes, but at the end of the day, email is something that's going to carry on. You never know. Instagram might not be around for the next 5 years. Facebook might not be around for the next 5 years. But your email is your identity. It's like it's like your post box at home. It's probably more valuable.
That's a really fantastic point, Jazz. No one's really talking about building your mailing list and using emails. No one's really talking about it today because we've been programmed to think that email is old. In fact, I get the most success in anything I wish to launch from my email. So I think we should touch upon that definitely in a bit more detail.
So do you advocate that when people come onto, when potential patients come onto our practice websites, that we should be requesting email addresses?
Certainly, yes, we should be. But it's a difficult one, right? So if someone comes onto a practice website, if you're asking for their email address, they're usually expecting to receive communications from the practice rather than the principal's views on how dentists have been left behind during the coronavirus pandemic, but how your view is different, right? This is where we're talking about personal branding and business branding. There's a slight difference. So it depends where you're collecting the email address as well. If I started receiving emails from CEOs about their own thoughts on slightly unrelated topics still to do with the industry, I might get a bit confused. So where you're collecting the email from and from what site is also important. And that's the beauty of personal branding. With a personal brand, you can get personal. You could send out an email talking about something you learned from Peppa Pig when your child was watching it and how you're going to apply it to business. People can relate to you as the person. With the business brand, there are some sort of rules. You have to draw the line somewhere.
Well said. Well, I sort of deviated a bit from where I wanted to go. So the first thing I was supposed to say in the script, I just got carried away. The first thing I was supposed to say in the script was, some time ago, I used to, when I was a newly qualified, I actually made myself a logo, and it was a terrible logo, but it was just a symbol at the time that I was trying to create a personal brand for my patients. But then I came across some comments from some experienced and established dentists to the effect that, not for me, but targeted to other young dentists, and I sort of then took that as an approach to get rid of my logo and burn it. And that was, who does this young dentist think he or she is to have a logo? I mean, what's that about? And then now, some years, the world is a different place. 7 years ago to then to now, and I think which industry shouldn't have a logo, which brand shouldn't have their own logo. So what are your thoughts on, should a dentist have their own brand? Should they have their own logo?
Interesting point. And I've seen some of these discussions that who do they think they are, or they don't even have a practice, or they've just come out of university and they're branding themselves. How dare they, right? So it was a difficult time, and sometimes you might still hear comments like this. Should dentists have their own logo? I feel certainly they should do. Whether you've got your own or an identity, so it doesn't have to be a logo type. It could just be an identity. So we know a mutual principal that you've worked with, and he's got a very particular style and a brand, and that's his brand. Similarly, there's lots of principals out there who own practices, and the ones that I'm working with, they're now focusing on building their personal brand because they realize that the reason why their patients sometimes come to the practice is because of them, the way they see the world, their thoughts. So I definitely feel dentists should be having their own brand, whether they've got a practice or not.
Well, every other industry you have this, and even medics, especially medics in the facial aesthetics world, they've all got the business cards with their own sort of logo, their branding. So I don't think dentists should be an exception. Now, if you're a young dentist on a budget, I've advocated on some of my other videos that you can go to a website called Fiverr. There's Fiverr to get some logos for £5 to £20, something like that. I mean, the actual voiceover at the beginning of this podcast for the American dude who introduced the podcast is from Fiverr, and you can get some great services. The other place is canva.com, which I actually use to make my sort of dentist logo, my dentist page. So this is what I advocate for people on a budget to start. What do you think about that? Any pitfalls?
Certainly. So there's a lot of talent out there, especially on places like Fiverr, an amazing site where there's lots of freelancers, untapped talent, which with some direction, they can produce some exceptional work, right? And I've seen some of this work and I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. Now, what you got to remember, what we're talking about here. If you just want a logo, there's lots of people that can create a logo. You can go on Fiverr, pay £20, right? And then you look at BP, they spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on their logo. So you got to ask yourself, why is someone charging me £10,000? Why are people paying millions of pounds? Why is it £20? So we've got to weigh up what you're getting here, right? Now, let's go back to your example. You said you made a logo and then later on you realized it was a terrible logo. But at some point, you surely didn't think it was a terrible logo when you're like, yeah, I'm going to use this. So tell me about that. How did you decide that, yeah, I like this logo? What was your thought process?
I'm actually laughing thinking about this logo. Okay, you know what? I'm quite open, honest on my podcast. Yeah. So let's go for it. It was I'm gonna let you finish your water first before I say it, because you might spit it out with laughter, right? It was a tooth with a turban on it.
All right. Fantastic.
So at the time I was, this is hilarious, it's cool, you know, I'm a Sikh guy with a turban, I'm a dentist and blah blah, and oh my god, I thought what a terrible idea when I look back at it, right? And people actually found it good and funny and nice at the time, but you know, I've certainly moved on to portray a more professional image. But honestly, I look back now, I can laugh at it, but at the time, you're right, I was like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, see, look, I certainly wasn't expecting that, but it's a great example, right? We can sometimes be the incorrect judge of the brand we're trying to build, because who Jazz is 7 years ago to who he is 4 years ago to who he is 2 years ago to who he is today, there's so many journeys we go through. So let's just take it away from dentistry for a moment and let's look at some highly established brands. Let's look at McDonald's. Let's look at the luxury brands, Chopard, Chanel, LV, Gucci, Boss. All of them have unlimited budgets on what they can spend on logo designs. They can go to the best people in the world. If you look at their identities, then they're not incredibly creative. They don't pop out at you. They are timeless. Okay? So the beauty of a successful brand is that even in 100 years' time, with a few tweaks, it's timeless. And this is what you don't get if you go to Fiverr, is someone who's very good and has been experienced and been doing this all their life and working with all these brands. They learn things along the way. Now, we living in the United Kingdom or wherever you're listening in from the world, we've been getting programmed from the brands from the moment we start watching television or looking at our phones. Quality brands are programming us about what looks good and what doesn't. Okay, so in India, if you go in India, in the mainstream, if you look at the television and look at the kind of brands that are out there, we'll cringe sometimes, but it's because it's quite normal because their programming is different. So we've been programmed by quite quality brands to understand what looks good, what doesn't look good. You just know it innately, a bit like beauty, right? There are some obvious, like, yeah, this person looks attractive, this person doesn't. It's our programming as we're growing up. So if we look at the luxury brands that exist today, we know just by looking at them, the font, the typeface, the space, we won't know what it is, but there's something about these brands which just look high quality. And this is where a professional comes in. A professional has dealt with so many brands and worked with so many brands. And my definition of professional is someone who's been doing this for years and years and years and has got a track record of brands that still pass the time of the test of time, right? So when you come to a professional, their job is to lead you, to get you what matches up with your brand. So your brand, you already have one, right? Your brand is how you communicate, how your patients perceive you, your style of dentistry, what kind of dentistry you're doing more of, or what kind of dentistry you want to do, what your view is on the world. So there's so much, and even the brand that you came up with, right? A tooth with a turban on top, that was really how you felt that you should go out there, because it's a funny thing, it's cool, it set you apart. So we've all got our brand. Now, a professional's job is to make you see what it is that you actually want. So we hear you, we don't give you what you say you want, we give you what you need. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's a professional's job.
Now, is it fair to say then, sorry.
Yeah, sure. No, carry on.
Is it fair to say then that if you're a year qualified, or maybe you're just really on a budget, that I'm a big fan of a saying, start now, get perfect later, to maybe use these services, the free services or cheap services like Canva and Fiverr, to start something, and then maybe when you're looking to scale, and then maybe actually come on to branding an entire website, and then also your social media, so everything is coherent with that, then maybe at that point you can then escalate and go up the stairs, and the next step to a professional. Is that an okay, acceptable way for a young dentist to start on their journey?
Absolutely, 100% it's an acceptable way. So once we identify what the difference is, then we can look at what we need to do to make sure that we're thinking in the right way, even though we've got a low budget, okay? So the way I've seen some amazing brands that have been designed for 50 quid. Like, even if you look at Google's original logo, from a designer's perspective, if it wasn't Google, we would be slating it. Like, who done this? My child could do better. Now, for some brands, it doesn't matter what the logo looks like because the product is so good. So there's no definitive rules. So I would say, now that hopefully you understand that branding is a career for some people, it's a life's work. Typography, you could study it 30 years and still have a lot to learn, right? We then need to see what can we do by using services like Fiverr, Canva, I think there was Logo Joy, or even trying things yourself. The things that we can do is doing our own research. So if you go to a logo designer who's just a good designer, they might ask you what your preference is. And you might say, oh, I really like orange. I really like orange because when I was growing up, that was the color of my football team, right? So we've got some personal preferences towards colors and logos. And I would say, look, why are you creating a logo? If you're creating a logo to please yourself, then yeah, go buy all of that. But if you're creating a logo to build your business, your future business, and you have a business, even as an associate, it's your business of dentistry. If you're building a logo for your patients and to attract the type of patients you want, and so when potential patients look at your brand, they're like, this is my guy or this is my girl, then you've got to think of it through their eyes, not your own. So I always say to people, if you want me to design you something that would look great in your living room for your own personal preference, then yeah, let's go for it. But this is not what you've hired us for. So I would say, just think about, when you get asked the question, what colors do you like? You need to ask the question back, well, based on what I've told you about my brand, what colors do you think would be good for me? Okay, you're meant to be led down that path because we've studied colors as well. Certain colors have different meanings. So asking the right questions is certainly important. Now, do your own research. The reason why some companies are paying hundreds of thousands of pounds of money for a logo is because they're paying for research. Okay, they're paying for time, they're paying for study, they're paying for conversation. The design element is a very small part of it. A bit like in a hotel room, the room is the most insignificant part in some areas because it's all about the service, the restaurant, the greeting, the checkout, the storage of your bags, that whole thing. So the logo is a small part of it. So do your research. One way you can do your research is asking yourself, what is my brand, right? So writing down, what is it about me that my patients like? What type of dentistry do I want to do? Do I really have a dream of opening a luxury clinic, or is that just not me? Do I just want to provide high quality dentistry behind the scenes? My thing is clinical. Do I want to be a speaker? All these things accumulate. So I would say the first thing you can do is write all of this down, because for a designer, there's no such thing as too much information. A good designer can draw something from this kind of information, right? So when they deliver you a design, they can say, I done it like this because you said you're going to be like that. But you need to think about this carefully. You might say, yeah, I want to be a speaker. I want to have a clinic in Chelsea. But you've got to really ask yourself, is this what I actually want in the next 5 to 10 years? Because the hard thing is, sorry, Jaz, I'm going on and on here. The hard thing is rebranding also later. It becomes a bit of a challenge. So you don't want to be going through this exercise again and again and again. You want to be tweaking. Like McDonald's, they don't keep rebranding, they tweak.
Brilliant. Well, you know, as someone who's made logos, several logos for using Fiverr in the past for various little projects, you don't get that exactly what you said there. You know, when you use Fiverr or when you use Canva, if you're doing it yourself, it's very much your projection, and you don't. You know, they're very paternalistic. They want you to be paternalistic when they're designing your logo on Fiverr. They're like, tell me what you want, because they know that they'll get their £20 without any refunds if they give you what they want, and that's very much based on your vision of the world. Whereas, you know, what you said, the difference may be the research and the actual timeless principles. So I think that settles the debate in terms of, yeah, maybe when you're on a budget early on, you can use these, but maybe when you're getting to when you have a bit more budget to play with, then consider a professional who may be able to create something that's a bit more timeless, with a bit more research and a bit more feedback with you to actually deliver what the main goal is in terms of what you want to project to the world.
100%.
Next thing I want to talk about is websites, right? So the colleague who reached out to me said, look, Jazz, you've got your website. So I've been making websites since I was 12 years old, right? It's something I like doing, something I to some degree have an interest in. I use WordPress myself. Now, when I was having a conversation with my friend, I said to her, well, I use WordPress. And she's like, what's that? Then like, oh, well, there's other things like Wix or Squarespace. She's like, you're talking a different language to me, right? Because she's a dentist, right? And most dentists don't have the background. Like, you know how you said your brothers were in design. I was, you know, I don't know how I got into it, but I've always been into making videos and websites when I was younger. Since I was like, age 12, 13, always did that. So for me, it's like second nature. And for me, it made sense to make my own. So two things I want to touch on here, Shaz. Firstly, I think dentists shouldn't make their own website. I think they should get help. Okay. And that's just me, because I don't think anyone can do it justice. And I think your website is so important. But the other thing is that should associates have their own websites? How do principals feel about their associates having their own websites generally? Because I know some principals might be like, well, you know, it's like a footballer at a football club. The footballer becomes bigger than the club. You know, that sort of perception. You know, I don't think it's like that, but I just want to hear it from you. What are your thoughts on associates nowadays? It's a big thing nowadays, associates having their own websites.
Yeah. We've seen at Digimax a massive, massive surge in associates approaching us who want a website and want branding, right? We've never seen anything like it in the last 2 years. The volume of inquiries is through the roof for this kind of thing. And when I'm having conversations with some of those people, some of them are actually about to buy a practice, but they're still looking to do this. And I think it comes down to one thing that before the natural route might have been for the forward-thinking dentist is to one day work in a practice, then I buy my own practice. And practice acquisition has completely changed, right? Once upon a time, it was a little bit easier. And I'm good friends with Frank Taylor and Associates, and they tell me, they sell a lot of practices, that just the price of practices, the lending, you know, the profitability, it's all changed. So practice ownership and also the stress levels, the governance, practice ownership isn't as appealing as it used to be before. So associates are kind of, I think even the millennial generation, they're kind of starting to feel like, I want a better quality of life necessarily, rather than being a principal. I'm not saying this is for everyone, but I think a large majority of them are thinking, I'd rather build my own brand and just see how things go. So I definitely think dentists should have their own website. And
what would you say to the principals who are thinking, hang on a minute, why is my associate having their own website? Why is my associate collecting their own reviews maybe? Do you think a principal should be worried? I mean, I'll tell you my projection, my view on that. I think there's a degree of synergy between a principal and an associate. And if an associate is going out of their way to advertise their services, that's saving the principal money from advertising. And essentially, the patients are still coming to the practice for the services. So I think it's a win-win personally, but some principals may not see it like that. What are your thoughts?
You're absolutely right, Jazz. Some principals may not see it like that. To you and I sitting here looking at this, it's like, yeah, it's a win-win. But you got to look at it from a principal's perspective as well, right? It's quite stressful being a principal. You invest a lot of money. You've got huge amount of debt. You're doing all of this, and then suddenly you see your associate promoting themselves, and you can have an internal conversation with yourself. What does this mean? Is he doing this so he's going to leave? You know, all I can say is that the best thing is have conversations with your principals, tell them what you want to do, and your principals can back you. They can help you with this. You go and do it on the side yourself, and then your principal finds out, it's going to send the wrong signal out. And I've had this experience in my own company. One day I was Googling quite a famous client of ours just to see what comes up. And I saw one of my team members' own portfolio come up higher than Digimax. I'm talking years and years ago. And I was like, I didn't even know he had a portfolio. He didn't even tell me about it. And immediately, I couldn't sleep all night. I thought,
Insecurities.
I mean, this is about 9 years ago. All sorts. So when I approached him, I'd already decided that I'm unhappy about this. We couldn't have an open conversation. And it did turn out. He was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm going to take you out. I didn't even know you would think like this. But if he had asked me, I'd been like, yeah, you know what? This is how you should do it. And why don't you put this piece of work? So get principals to back you because your intention is pure, to build your own self up and to bring people to the practice. And principals, if you're listening, don't be threatened by it because this can only be a good thing. You're getting free promotion of the practice because obviously the associate's going to say, I work here, come here. So let it happen, but definitely have conversations with your principals.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you raised there. It's all about open and honest communication with your principal. So that's a point well received. I'm going to really twist your arm now, Shaz, okay? I'm going to really twist it, okay? If a dentist really wanted to go out there and maybe a couple of years qualified again, like giving that example, I'm just picturing someone who may not have as much disposable income or may not be able to, in a position where they are at the moment in their journey, to be able to invest as much as they can into their personal brand as a whole. And so now they've got their cheap logo that they're happy with. They don't know if it's going to be timeless or not. And now they're going to make a website. Do you recommend they make one just a presence with Wix, WordPress, Squarespace? Do you have any experience with these? Anything you can recommend being easy? Or would you say is your advice, you know what? I wouldn't. Just stay clear. I mean, like I said, it's different for me. I had lots of experience and background with that. But for the average dentist that you know, what do you think?
Before I answer that, we've got to look at the opportunity cost here as well. Okay. So if you're pitching for thousands of pounds worth of treatment and there's good profitability in there, you've also got to look at who is this kind of client. Does this patient of mine, if they go on holiday, do they go on expensive holidays? Do they go on luxury holidays? Do they stay in great hotels? Do they drive great cars? So the problem with things not looking right, particularly on a website, because a logo's a logo, right? The minute you put it on a full shop front with pages and images, it can put someone off. I can tell you, even when I don't have my designer's hat on, but I'm going to procure services, if I see a website that just doesn't follow the flow of a good quality website, and I'm just looking from a normal person's perspective, or even if I'm sitting next to my wife, we will switch off and think that's reflective of their services. So you might have a lot to lose if the website's not looking right. But let's just say you think you've got a good eye for it and you've done your research and you know what good and bad looks like. That you're not a complete beginner. If you're complete beginner and you're like, I really, really don't have a clue here, ask a professional. But let's just say yeah. Sorry, Jazz.
Let's do something completely unscripted. I didn't even think about doing this beforehand. Let's do something completely crazy, live for the first time. Well, we're always live for us, obviously, uninterrupted. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you my website that I designed myself. Zero input from anyone, right? And even if we discussed before, if you disagree with me, you disagree with me. It's cool. You just tell me, okay, I like this, but I don't like that. And I'm hoping that maybe some dentists out there will get an eye for what you're seeing. So I'm happy to take criticism. Honestly, I'm happy. So I'm just going to load that up on a browser. I'm going to go to Google Chrome. So this website is for my patient-facing website. It's not my podcast website. This is my patient-facing website. It's jazz.dental. I'm just loading it now. And let's see. We're going to go to Zoom. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so can you see this?
I can indeed, yeah.
Okay, so this is my website. I've got like a rolling animation playing in the beginning, little slogan.
Guys, before you show me the site, if you just freeze it at the top, and before you say anything to me, can you just tell me about your brand? Yeah. What type of dentist are you? What the future is? What kind of patients you see and what kind of patients you want to attract?
Sure. So my brand is high quality general dentistry. And I want to put across that I'm very passionate about dentistry. I mean, before before I go into more on that, I just want to scroll down and show you. I've got a video to just, first thing you see is what I stand for. Is 60 seconds of me explaining exactly that. And essentially what I stand for is if you want to get heart surgery from a cardiologist, you want your cardiologist to be a geek, and you want them to be passionate about what they do and really fall in love with the details. And that's what I'm about. In a nutshell, I am all about good quality dentistry and being obsessed about that.
Okay, I understand. So high quality dentistry is at the forefront of what you do. Extremely friendly, I see there, and that's true. Yep. I feel that's a big part of your brand. You're approachable. So let's just analyze. Let me give you my feedback on the top. So if we go right to the top, okay?
Yep, right to the top.
Yeah. So remember, I've been doing this for a long time. So my views, not to offend, is just to report to you, right? How I would do things. Let's start with the first thing. Your logo on the top left. I would just increase the size of that, because that is quite an important aspect of your site. I can't read the text below your surname, okay? So I would say legibility is important. You wrote about. Now, this is a personal site, so we don't want to say about, we want to say my story, okay? Smile gallery, we want to use the right term, so smile transformations, yeah? Testimonials, what my patients say, okay? YouTube channel, does it need the word channel? Or watch my viewed videos, okay? Contacts, I would change that to where I work, because this is a personal site. So we want to use language where they're reading it in a personal way. We're not using corporate terminology, okay? That's the number one thing. Now, as soon as I look at this video, the technical skill, obviously, in what you're doing there in terms of the clinical stuff is probably going to be very high. But from a patient's perspective, a patient is going to struggle to resonate with that. To them, that's quite a scary thing, okay? So I would say maybe this is not the right place for that. You with a patient, I'm not sure what's going on here. So it might be clear if I spend a little longer working that out, but the thing is, our data tells us people leave within 3 seconds. So I might make up my mind about what's going on there, and I might be completely wrong. So before I've even scrolled, I've got all this feedback for you. If you imagine the people who think like that, they've already left, or they've disengaged, or they might engage with something else. So we need to try and make this appeal to everyone else.
That was fantastic for you. I have to say, really, just from that 1 minute, I've taken a lot away from that. So, I mean, that's the difference between me doing it alone as a hobby. And yes, I've got the sort of functionality of the website, my reviews. I know how to embed these videos in. I know how to do all this stuff. But what I didn't appreciate, what you said me there, is the language and the terminology I could use. So that's a really fantastic feedback, I think.
And the video you've done like much more than most people do, right? You've got a video further down, which you said gives you what I stand for, right? What I stand for. This is the money video, right? I can really get to understand Dr. Jazz by watching this video. But stats tell us people aren't going to scroll down and click that video. If you look at the clicks on that versus your website visitors, I can guarantee the views are going to be much lower than how many visitors you get. If you want someone to watch a video that is entirely crucial to the way you want them to think, that video, you need to force it upon them in some way. So I would put it right at the top of your site, watch my story or how I think, press play. Like you're leading them to watch that in. So placement of things is quite important. So you've got your reviews there, which is great social proof. You've got a bit about what makes you unique. You've got Smile Gallery there, great. You've got videos for patients. So again, looking at this, I would simplify this. So instead of using the screenshot of the video as it stands right now, because there's text overlaying more text and it looks quite busy, I would just make those graphics the text of the video. So so your titles are quite good, right? How to know if you grind your teeth. Amazing. I just want to see that. I don't need to see all that stuff beneath it. So maybe you could highlight that a bit better or remove that thumbnail or change the thumbnail. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I get it.
A great one. My services. So unless you're a mechanic, which you're not, Jazz, I say don't use that term. Yeah. You offer treatments. You're not, okay, it is services, but call it treatments. It's just a much nicer word. Why choose Dr. Jazz Gulati? Are you looking for... So look, eye for detail, great. Gentle hands, high standard of dentistry. And you explained what that means, right? So if you just wrote high standard of dentistry, the GDC might say, are you implying that other dentists don't have a high standard of dentistry? This is a true thing. It happens. But you've gone and said, well, it's because I've attended hours of postgraduate training, which is optional. Yeah. So justifying what you're saying, right? Yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, you are someone who's been in the industry so long, so I'm very grateful for this feedback. But I'm hoping people watching this and listening to this who are thinking about doing it themselves, they can see that yes, you may be able to do it, but you don't get that that extra sort of cutting edge that you're able to give me here, which is brilliant.
Indeed. Let's look at the email addresses you've got in the footer. Now, that it might seem like, we've got the email address there. We've made it easy for people. There's a big problem in displaying email addresses in the way they are displayed here. The issue is one, if they're logging on from a device which is not their own, they're not going to be able to email you by clicking it. Firstly, I know it happens rarely, but it does happen. Secondly, emails can get lost. They can go into spam or, all the issues we know about emails. If you lead them through to a contact form, the contact form should be saving somewhere as well as emailing you, right? So when it goes on a contact form, the chance of you receiving that contact form is greater because you programmed the website to always deliver you this contact form. The problem with email addresses is it's coming from many different senders. So it might go into junk. And we all know that it's never acceptable to say, I'm so sorry, it went to spam, or I didn't receive your email. So you want to minimize the challenges your patients are going to face. So lead them to a contact form.
I have a contact form, but I take your point that should be there instead of the email addresses, and I appreciate that. I'm going to stop sharing because there's a few more things we want to discuss. But honestly, I hope people watching, listening, found that useful, as useful as I did, to get critiqued on what I thought was something that's good in a sort of website functionality. So the fact that I can produce something about from my experience, I show other dentists and they're like, wow, Jazz, you made a website. It looks really nice. But the level of detail that you're able to critique me then, I really appreciate it, was really useful. And I found that fantastic. And I hope people watching can take away a few learning points from that in terms of when they apply it. And hopefully you can see that you may need a bit of extra help, not just with the actual website itself, but how the website is effective.
Absolutely. And to be honest, in my experience, I haven't really seen a website that good made by a dentist before. That's a very, very good website. I'm saying very good because it's got everything there, but it's just the psychology, the user interface, looking at stats, the finer detail. That will only come is if you spend all your hours.
No, absolutely.
Right? So it is actually a very good website. But again, it comes down to what your expectations are long term.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it, especially off the cuff on the whim like that. We didn't know we were going to go in that direction. But honestly, that was really good live feedback. Okay, and this is going to be a broad question. So the last question, very broad question. I follow the work of someone called Gary V. Do you follow Gary V?
I don't follow him, but I do listen to his odd video here and there.
Yeah. One of the things that he says is that his everything he says is his opinion, obviously, but I think some of the stuff he comes out with is very useful. And he says that everyone, is a media company first, your occupation. So everyone's a media company first, their occupation. So when you apply that to dentistry and dentists, we're a media company first, a dentist. How relevant do you think that is, and why do you think it's more important now more than ever before to have a online presence and a brand?
Sure, really good question. And that's an interesting way to put it, actually. I didn't really think of things in that way, but understandably, a lot of senior dentists get upset, right? Seeing some dentists suddenly fly through and they're getting TV opportunities and all kinds of things coming their way. And you're thinking, hey man, I've been doing this 30 years longer than you. What's going on? The power of media has allowed us to accelerate where we want to be, right? So even if we look at Instagram, hundreds of millions of users on every single day, the power of all these networks, they allow you to bypass millions of pounds worth of advertising spend and just go and do it yourself, right? And this is where Gary Vee is saying you're a media company first. It's never been easier to put graphics out, put websites out, put your Instagram out, put your story out, because it's everyone's tuned in to these networks and they're saying, brainwash me for free. Every time I'm logging in to my phone, Instagram, Facebook, I'm saying to you, Jazz, brainwash me for free because I'm tuned in. This is the TV now. So yeah, I would say it's definitely understanding video, understanding graphics. These are essential skills. And I'm sure there's going to be a time where this is taught properly in schools. Yeah, how to film a video is a key life skill. Sounds strange, but I see it happening.
So what do you think, some dentists and some principals, they're of that mentality of build it and they will come. Right. So I think that you're missing something in the middle. Whereas nowadays, okay, unless you market yourself, this is just my opinion, and you're the expert. You tell me. Unless you market yourself, and unless you actually get a megaphone, and you don't have to send your message in an obnoxious, narcissistic sort of way. It's about resonating your story with those who will also resonate with it, and connect with your story. And those are your sort of clients, customers, patients, whatever, for life. So unless you actually get that megaphone and actually shout to the world like, hey, I'm Jazz, I'm about high quality dentistry. If you also want high quality dentistry and we can get along with each other, then we're a perfect match. That needs to happen. Or is there a place for build it and they will come still?
Build it and they will come. No, I don't believe there's a place for it. I can categorically say it doesn't exist. When we take on a client at Digimax, we say, look, are you going to be looking at doing any SEO? Because if you're not going to be, then do you really think now's the time?
Shaz, what is SEO? Because a lot of people, young dentists. I mean, the colleague I spoke to, who's the reason why we're having this chat today. Actually, she was a spark. If I said SEO, she'd be like, again, different language. So we go right to the basics.
Sure. So SEO is search engine optimization. If you Google something and a website comes up, that website coming up in the natural results, the one that doesn't say sponsored, that is the result of search engine optimization. So either that's happened naturally because Google thinks that result is important, or a company like ours has done something to help the chances of your site coming up. So sometimes you might think that, yeah, I'll make a website and it'll appear on Google. If someone types in dentist in London, that's unfortunately not the case. So an SEO professional, search optimization professional's job is to then help you come up in Google. The only time you're going to come up in Google without doing any work is if you've got a name as unique as yours. So if you type in Dr. Jazz Gulati, it might come up, or Shaz Memon. But other than that, the only time Google's going to help you is if you've got someone helping you with SEO. I just want to give you a little bit more on that. So if you type in Windows in Google, you're not going to see double glazing companies come up. You're going to see Microsoft Windows come up on a lot of the search results. Now, Google, the reason why we use Google is because we find what we're looking for almost every single time, right? If not the first page, within the first few pages. And before Google existed, if you're young enough to remember, there was Excite, there was Lycos, there was Ask Jeeves, there was Yahoo. I mean, Yahoo still exists, but how many people use
Yell?
it? I don't know. Yell, yeah, all these things. Google took over because the quality of its index is so high. So because the quality of its index is so high, I believe it's fair to say that is their superpower. That is their unique selling point. Yeah. So if I can manipulate the index, if you said, Shaz, here's a blank check, I want to come up for dentists in Luton, dentists in Aylesbury, dentists in Manchester, I can't accept that payment because Google's algorithms are so strong, they're so well protected that you can't trick Google into doing something that's incorrect, right? I can't make that happen. All I can do is make sure that if you are a dentist in Gravesend, that Google is starting to listen to you and bring you up for where you should be for those sort of terms. So our job is to amplify what's true and not trick the index. And Google's made it very hard for companies like us to do that, but we know how to do it in an ethical way. And Google's saying, well, right, big man, if you've got so much money, why don't you just pay us for Google AdWords? And then you can rank to the top. So it's a real big discussion.
Brilliant. Well, I think we covered lots of things there. So we agree right at the end here that actually nowadays, you can't build it and expect patients to just come in. You need to do a degree of marketing, and that's a whole other chat. But we talked about logos. We talked about associate having their own website and the pros and cons of that. And if you are going to have your own website, to sort of be careful in terms of what you're trying to portray. And I really appreciate the feedback they gave on my website, and I'm hoping people watching and listening would have gained something from that. I certainly will be going and changing mine, and probably in some years' time, I may find that actually I haven't got enough time, or that my love for doing this sort of stuff may diminish. Other priorities may come along, and I may be reaching out to yourselves and the people in the industry for that type of work. Any closing comments, Shaz, for the dentists listening about this episode on personal branding for associates and dentists?
Of course. I think Jazz, it was great to bring your website up as an example, because you can talk in theory, but until you demonstrate it. So that, I think that was great. I just want to say, look, if you're a young dentist and you need guidance and help, often I'll get messages asking me, Shaz, what do you think of this? And I'll be like, yeah, look, tell your designer to do X, Y, Z, and it'll look a little bit better. So you're welcome to reach out to me. Just understand I might not get back to you straight away, but I'm happy to help in any way. Also, when you're doing this, you got to ask yourself, why am I making a website? So I've made a website, but what do I want from it? Now, you got to remember, there's lots of reasons someone will get to your personal website, right? You give them a treatment plan. Let me go home and think about it. It's a lot of money here. Google the dentist, right? Usually, you're going to come up as a profile on the practice's website where you work at. Maybe a paragraph, GDC number. It's usually going to be quite bog standard, right? Don't know anything more about you. If your website now comes up, can see the story. I can get to know you, what you stand for, other cases, how you think, looking at your blogs. So people are Googling you for lots of reasons. One might be...
I just want to stop you there. People are Googling you, and I so agree with you. You know, I had like an ENT appointment a year ago. And when I got the email through with the name of my ENT surgeon, the first thing I did is I Googled him. And he had a fantastic web presence, really good reviews that I read from happy patients. And I don't know, I can't put a percentage on what patients, what percentage of patients are Googling you when they get that email saying, you know, welcome to the Richmond Dental Practice. Your dentist is Dr. Jazz Gulati. Your appointment's at 11 a.m. I imagine it's a very high percentage nowadays, or maybe of a certain age bracket, who will be entering your name on Google.
The percentage is high. We know it. I've seen it for myself, even with my own name. So people are Googling you. Now, they might Google you in that setting, but you might be doing stuff in the local community. You might be backing a charity. You might put an article out there. You might post a comment on something. You are going to be getting Googled. And these people Googling you, they might be your patients, but they might also be key opportunities. In a month, how many times do I get asked to give an expert comment in a mainstream newspaper? At least once or twice, it will land on my lap. Never used to happen before, because I just thought, let's just work on Digimax, right? Then eventually I looked at the analytics, and more people were Googling my name than my own company name. And I thought, I now need to set up a web presence. And on that web presence, I could be me. I could talk about my charity, my books, blogs. I could host webinars. And it can be, that's my own brand. I can do what I want with it. And Digimax can just stay focused on the key services. So there's so many people looking you up for hundreds of reasons, many reasons you've not even thought about today, but they could be opportunities disguised as visitors. So yeah, think about that.
Brilliant. Amazing. Shaz, thank you so much for coming on and giving us your pearls and giving me the sort of critique. And I really appreciate that critique on the website. And I'm hoping people found that useful. Really, really great learning points that we had for a very different topic. My podcast is usually very clinical, but to help my colleague who reached out, and I think it will help hundreds of dentists out there to learn this stuff. You know, a lot of dentists who don't even know what SEO is and where to even begin about thinking about a website, a logo. Should you have one? Should you not? The importance of marketing. You know, people just think, you know, build it and it will come, and that needs to change, I think, as we discussed. So thank you so much for adding so much value to this episode.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. As always, I really appreciate it. So let me know what you thought about that. Personal branding. Are you thinking about having your own website, a logo, or maybe just sign up for Doctify? And like I said, you get 10% off if you quote Protrusive. And I look forward to joining you in the next episodes. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you sign up to the newsletter. So as soon as the episode's released, you'll get an email with like an extra description and a summary in it. And that's the newsletter on protrusive.co.uk for updates, as well as the Instagram at Jazzy Gulati. And of course, the Facebook page, Protrusive Dental Podcast. Thanks so much, and catch you next one.